Hi guys, today we're going to talk about comparing fractions. We're going to look at 3 different ways to compare these two fractions to find out which one is greater, which one is less, or if they are equal. So our first method is going to be to draw a picture. Now, when I draw a picture, I want to make sure that my fraction bars are pretty close to exactly the same size in length. If I draw one that's longer than the other, I'm not going to get a good representation of how large each piece is. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw 3/4. So I'm going to split my bar in half and then in half again to create fourths. And then I will shade in 3 of those fourths. So there's my quick picture for 3/4. Now I'm going to draw 2/6. So again, I'm going to split my bar in half, and this time I'm going to split it into thirds, which will give me a total of 6 pieces, and I'm going to shade in 2 of those pieces to show 2/6. So I can see from this picture that 3/4 is clearly larger than 2/6. So drawing a quick picture is a great strategy. It gets a little more complicated when your denominators are much larger, so you have a lot more pieces. Or if I were to draw like sevenths and eighths, because my picture would have to be very accurate. So one strategy, draw a quick picture. Our second strategy is to use benchmarks or to put our fractions on a number line. So I'm going to draw a number line from 0 to 1. And if you were to do this in your head with benchmarks, that's totally fine. And I'm going to think about what would be right between 0 and 1. Of course, we would have 1/2. So the first thing I want to do is I want to think about where's 3/4 going to be on my number line. Is it going to be less than 1/2, more than 1/2, or equal to 1/2? So I want to think about my denominator of 4. Well, I know that half of 4 is 2. So 2/4 would be equivalent to 1/2. So I know that 3/4 is going to go to the right of that on my number line. So now I'm going to do the same thing with 2/6. Thinking about 6, I know that half of 6 is 3. So 3/6 would be equivalent to 1/2. So I know that 2/6 has to be less than 1/2. So now I can tell just by knowing that 3/4 was larger than 1/2, 2/6 was less than 1/2, I can show that 3/4 is the larger fraction. The third strategy that we're going to talk about is to find a common denominator. So I want to take my two fractions, 2/6 and 3/4, and I want to think about my denominators. I need to find one that is common. So if I count by 6, I would say 6, 12, 18. I'm finding common multiples. If I count by 4, I would say 4, 8, 12. So I heard that number 12 in both of the numbers. So I'm going to change both of these fractions to have a common denominator of 12. So again, we want to think, how do I jump from 6 to 12? I know that I need to multiply by 2. And whatever I do to the denominator, I have to make sure to do to the numerator. And 2 times 2 will give me 4. So I know that 2/6 is equivalent or equal to 4/12. I'm going to do the same thing with my other fraction. How do I jump from 4 to 12? I would do multiply by 3. Whatever I do in the denominator, I have to do in the numerator. And then 3 times 3 will give me 9. So 3/4 is equivalent to 9/12. So now that we have the same denominator, 12ths, well, which one is more, 4 of those pieces or 9 of those pieces? 9 of the pieces would be larger. So these are 3 different ways that I can use to show that 3/4 is greater than 2/6.